Yes. So, on my end of things, I had been a little bit delayed because I had a bunch of family coming to town, so I still have a little bit left of work to do, but I can do it tomorrow. Be fine as long as I, dedicate tomorrow to finishing it. But what I have finished, I have gone through a bunch of the classes, put them on World Anvil, so the Artificer, the Binder, and the Fighter Unchained are on there. Um, Now, since those two classes are core classes, I'm still not sure how best to do it, since there's a lot of uh, copyright stuff involved with them. So currently, what I have done is I have locked them from view from the public, so they can't just like Google and have access to a class. Um, that said, there's a passcode we can type in, and it will give you access to the class. So, which I believe should put us legally okay in terms of having it on the World Anvil. And the password is Syrik, capital S, Syrik. So, people will probably guess it, but there it is. If you ever want to look at those classes on World Anvil, they're available. I'm working on getting the Ranger Unchained, the Warlock Unchained on there as well. And yeah, like having the subclasses on there that aren't part of the SRD. 5e is really, well, I should say D&D is really anti non-SRD content available. So, yeah. But since this is fairly homebrewed, and it's also hidden behind you cannot access, it's not public, it is essentially a private thing, it should be good for us to use. But I'm going to keep looking into it, see if there's a better way to do it. Because, can't really expect people to use PDFs all the time for the classes that we need them to use. Another thing that I've been working on, I finished all the origins for Eldiria, so those are now all available. I've looked at the other origins we have, and I certainly built things stronger than others have built theirs. So probably going to have to go through them and make sure they're all of a similar power level. That's fine. It's an easy update. The character sheet has been another thing I've been working on. The automation for the class features and all the like racial features and all that. That's probably going to be an even longer project than I'd prefer. So unless we have a team working on this, I don't think we're going to be able to launch with full automation. But, I mean, if we see someone listed as a fighter, we see someone listed as a human, we know what the features they have. So it's not super big of a deal. So, that's fine. But I've automated the sheet to have all the origins placed in there as well, so they can choose the origin properly. One of my players in my Sunday group did find a bug in that I did not have Warlock as an available class to pick, so that's been fixed as well. And there's a few other things I added, like listing out stamina as a feature that's just listed on all character sheets now. So that's a thing. One of the big things I did, though, outside of the character sheet and the class updates on World Anvil, is that the character creation page has been completely overhauled. I have updated everything to fit the Living World's theme, so it should be like, here's what you should do, here's your character sheet link, here's your how you character submit your character, here's your how you choose your race, here's your starting age, here's your origin, and so on and so forth. And it has all these supplementary rules added onto this page now. So if you're wondering what your max HP should be, and you have to be like, oh, it's in a different page altogether, it's now on one page. So that should help with confusion and some of those issues. Part of that has been changed in that martial and spellcasting supplementary rules have been combined into one document now. And the only really thing that kept from martial supplementary rules was overexertion. So I kind of just added that and just spellcasting supplementary rules and then renamed it to supplementary rules. But the character creation document now on World Anvil should be all we really need for players to use. If people have suggestions, feel free to give them. But I think right now it gets the job done. One of the other things I've been working on is getting the crafting systems and the weapons and armor and all that to World Anvil, so players can just utilize our library of resources there. Because again, you can't really expect players to use PDFs all the time. But that's a bigger thing. It's not something I need for launch. But I do want to have the crafting system on World Anvil. So I'm going to be focusing my time on that after I get the last little bit of DDs on the World Anvil. Because that was the thing I've been having issues with due to the family coming into town and all that. Is that I have not finished the DDs, but I can finish the number of DDs I have left in about a day of work, so I'm not too worried about it. There is another thing I was going to speak of. What was it? There was... Nope, that's the wrong document.
On that topic, we still need a bunch of patrons created, right?
Patrons created?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, we need a bunch of them still. We were talking about the number a couple weeks back.
Oh, yes, patrons. I kept thinking of, like, Patreon. I was like, I don't think that was part of our discussion. Like, I know I want one, but I don't recall a discussion on Patreon. But no, patrons. We need some patrons on the list, yes. I believe I have a list somewhere. It should be in, like, the Divinity channel or something like that. But, yeah, I'll get that on there.
To make Patreon the patron of wealth.
Yes. But,
Oh, it's definitely copyright, but hey.
Yeah, I mean...
They can't stop us.
We just have the Patreon, the patron of wealth, just linked to Patreon. There we go. Oh yeah, I remember now. I've been working on some more of the equipment guide stuff outside of World Anvil. Realizing a lot of our systems are going to require some structures and built like that. So I've been working on a structure mechanic in the equipment guide. So if someone wants to have like a workshop, there should be rules for that soon. Or if someone wants to, build their own house, there's going to be rules for that soon. I'm mostly just converting my Pathfinder structure system I have, so it's not really a lot of work for me. It's mostly just a side project, but, soon. I've also reviewed some of the side content. I forgot to message Joki about your mana stuff. I need to do that. But Lycanthrope's been going through. There's, some things to put on World Down from there. I know Sithams and I have been talking about the vampire stuff as a potential option. One of the things with lycanthropy, though, which kind of coincides with the vampire discussion, is that the lycanthrope itself, there's obviously a difference between an afflicted lycanthrope and a natural-born lycanthrope. Part of Sitham's document does have the option for a player race of natural-born lycanthrope, similarly scaled to our other player races in terms of power level. What are people's thoughts on that?
Well, originally my intention for including them in the document in the first place was mostly for the potential for a player unlock later down the line. I don't think it should be available from the get-go, but
I can definitely see it being like an unlock from a Borussia campaign or something like that.
Have it set up where they find underground people of werewolves. Something like that.
Something like that. Tie it to a campaign, have it as an unlock for the campaign. I mean, if you're worried about racial bloat, you should already be worried. I have way too many races. There's like 72 of them.
Meh, it's fantasy. Who cares?
Yeah.
We have crab people.
People will play what they want to play.
Yeah.
We have crab people. That's a thing.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. My main issue with my having so many races, which I knew this was going to be a problem for Kydron because Kydron's designed to be like the planet of all races, is trying to find a place for them in the world. Because like the big thing with Skyrim is I want to have kingdoms that are like dedicated to a particular race. So like there's a kingdom of Goliaths within the Thousand Peaks. There is a kingdom of Minotaur in similar region. There's a kingdom of centaurs within Hakuda, and a bunch of other things like that. Yeah, no problem, no problem. With that though, I do like having some unlockable races, especially ones that we already have made. Makes it easy, for us to not have to worry about prepping it before or while a campaign's running. That all said, that does coincide with the vampire class that Sith has been working on, in that I do think having a race template tied to it would make it much easier to create, as they were talking about with me. But what are people's thoughts on race locked classes, or more specifically, a template locked class? Because vampire race, air quotes, would be a template race, which could be applied to any race.
Yeah, and just to preface this as to why I proposed a potentially race-locked class was vampires have a lot of shit going on in Syrik, and it was turning into an insane amount of class feature bloat. So
yeah, I think like level 1 was like 8-10 features, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because technically, it could be very easy to become a vampire, or very hard depending on how you.
Well, we also have to remember that we're not like just handing out, being bit by a vampire or
Wouldn't mind vampire
werewolf
overriding a lot of
willy-nilly.
racial features,
Mhm.
but I don't know if we want a singular vampire race.
The main thing we were talking about, or that Sithms was working on, is that the vampire template race would be akin to, say, the Asmar template, where there's a lot of core features, but you do have the option to gain some ancestry features. But like the core race itself is unique to the race. So kind of like how Dampier is Dampier, where you have your core Dampier race features, but you then have some that are tied to your original race.
You could have it. Well, no, that would.
So a
I
template.
I was thinking about 3.5 templates because that's one of the few places where I remember them from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean my template races are essentially inspired by the 3.5 templates.
Because the way it works in 3.5 is that you just slap it on top of what you already have, but it gets a little crazy.
It gets a little crazy, yeah. I ran a lot of template races in Pathfinder.
Actually, on the topic of werewolves and vampires, are they racially limited, or can any race become afflicted and express mostly the same traits?
For the most part, any race can become afflicted. There is some limitations in that a vampire, the way that they turn others is dependent on their bloodline, as well as the creature type they're changing. So, for example, if a vampire were trying to turning a Arborean, a plant folk, they don't exactly have blood in the way that vampires see blood. Like, they do have air quotes blood, in that they do take bleed damage and some such things.
Oh god, VTM time.
Yes. But there is a vampire that can turn plant folk into vampires, and that's the Genzi. So, yes and no. They can become any of the lycanthropes or vampires without too much issue.
Undead plant.
Well, I mean, we already have blighted plants. It's halfway there.
No, it's just
We do have those.
It's just like, but they survive off of sunlight and water. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we do have templates, like proper 3.5 style templates, I would say they would definitely take up ASI slots, or feat slots, because feat slots are guaranteed, ASIs are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about proper templates,
I mean,
though.
are they getting any bonus modifiers like in 3.5 with templates, like bonus to strength or stats or anything like that, or no? Just special abilities.
It depends on the template. I would say if we were to add proper templates, they would be bonuses to the cap, similar to how we have factions be a bonus to the cap.
Okay. But they can't go over cap even with a faction bonus, or can they? That's something to consider.
Yeah, no. Once you hit your cap, even if you have, for example, let's say you're at 20 strength, and you then gain a +2 from something, you still are at 20. You don't gain to 22 because your cap is 20.
Okay. Right.
But the faction, because we do have factions that boost your cap by 2, template could do that as well. I believe the actual full vampire template does this. I'd have to look at the World Amble page for Vampires again to confirm this, but yeah. Let's see here, reading through the messages in the chat real quick. Overall, though, that was the core thing I wanted to discuss for my stuff, Legacy. It was just, hey, look, I did a bunch of things. They're available now. I think we're nearly ready to launch. Like, we can probably start full discussions of launch right now, because what I have left is going to take me maybe the rest of tomorrow, and then I'm done. At least what I have for launch.
Do you think the character sheet as it is now is good enough to go for launch?
Sounds good. Go ahead.
All right. I do think the character sheet is viable as it stands.
Okay.
I just want to get with the tech team that we've been working with to see how well they can integrate it into Avray. But I think as is, like, the only things that...
Yeah, I have an update on that end.
Oh, cool. But the only thing that I wanted to add to it was the automation features to it, and that's just so we don't have people be like, she doesn't have listed features. What can they do? But like, if you see someone as level 6 fighter and they are listed as having the subclass champion, we know what they can do. There's not really a lot of change there.
That works. Then we can put it up in the character creation thing and tell people they can start summarizing or theory building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the core things are set to be locked fields, data validation fields. So
Avray is awful for custom sheet and homebrew integration. For launch, our best option is basically just individual character sheets on a central folder. It'll actually lead into one of the 4 topics I have to bring up today.
Got the statement membership it's really needed because people were going to get confused. Yeah, this has everything that Stack had brought up before, with people needing to see the various optional rules as well.
What I was saying earlier was that there's actually a fair amount of background LW stuff that needs to be done still.
Mm-hmm.
Content-wise, we're looking good though.
Indeed. I was just reading through chat, but yes. Background stuff to go through, yes, indeed.
So on to the background stuff. First up, let me type something up.
All right. Yeah, there's innate racial traits as well as swappable ones, which I do need to go through them with balance team to make sure they are appropriately scaled. But I think right now they get the job fine. Yeah, probably need to add a few more X features, which are the ones that are always given innate, as you say. Yeah, I do need to add the Unchained Ranger and the Unchained Warlock, but I can do those tomorrow without too much difficulty. I would say they are limited to the current origins that we have in place. That said, one of the things I've been working on, which I have not published just yet, has been a generic, air quotes, origin list. So they can choose those, which will allow them to play from other regions. or be from other regions, not play from, yeah. So like origin outsider, or origin what was the other one I was thinking of? Origin Greenseer, Origin Highlander, Origin Knight. You know, key origins there are probably coincide a little bit with the birth and profession traits, but do give origin boons and options that they can choose. That way, players have a bit more leeway going in.
First, for the sake of getting us launch ready as soon as possible, I'll be doing baseline write-ups for as much of the stuff we have listed on the big roadmap discussion we had a couple months back and posting them for people to discuss during each meeting, since most of the stuff here isn't really directly votable anymore. To be very clear, you can always bring up suggestions or concerns about anything, and if there's enough of a separate route that can be taken, we'll put it up for a vote. This will keep us from having to spend 2 to 3 weeks on each topic.
Mm-hmm.
As for the prepared ones for this week, first up is Prestige and Influence. We don't currently have a department handling purchases of that sort, and I wanted to see if anyone had thoughts on whether economy, political, or a separate department should handle this. In addition, we should codify what exactly Prestige and Influence are, as we've had ideas thrown around over the past few months but nothing finalized yet.
Mm-hmm. I know we have some documents in peer review that we're going over this topic. If someone wants to go grab those documents and start expanding upon them, they are free to do so. No one does, I might do it myself, but the current idea I have for it is that prestige is kind of like a worldly prestige, a character's indicator of their, I wouldn't say heroism, because that kind of implies that they're only available for good characters, but for lack of a better word, heroism.
Impact
Think of it,
on the world?
Impact on the world is a good word for it, yeah. Think of it kind of like if you played Fable, think of it like one's rank in the guild. So it'd be like your prestige within the Adventurer Guild, where your sigil is tied to. While influence is tied to the region. It's your fame, your infamy for that region. And while that certainly has RP functionality to it, prestige itself has mechanical functionality to it. As you'll likely have noticed at this point, there are certain features on the World Anvil, such as training, that specify your prestige score. That's my current idea for it right now. But I know that there were some expansions upon this idea in peer review, so yeah.
Okay, will prestige ever be spent, or is it mostly a threshold thing?
See, I like the idea of it being spent in certain ways, but we would need to have a system in place for that. So I believe the document in peer review does go over this. So I mean, it's possible. as it stands right now, I don't have anything in place that would allow it to be spent.
I think at one point, I know we talked about influence being the spendable one and prestige just being a lot more limited.
Either way, you could set up like a currency for favors, like from like I don't know, RP aspect and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like they did a favor for a noble, they gained some prestige for that, but then later on they asked that noble for a favor, therefore debt's paid.
Mm-hmm.
It goes away. Kind of idea.
Definitely work. Like that sort of thing could definitely work as either prestige or influence. I can see influence being more likely in such things.
Yeah, because that way, like, it's like, yeah, you basically, just getting a favor you're owed, and then
Mhm.
Can't
it's
believe
gone.
we're playing a 4x game in Syrik now. Time to spend 500 influence to declare war.
I mean,
There's obvious limitations. But yeah,
I mean, there's limitations, but
if
get
you
enough
racked up that
influence.
much, influence, I mean, shit.
If you have enough influence where you can talk with the king and you have his ear, or queen in her ear, or their ear, you can probably do some certain crazy things.
Declaring war is not a free action. You know Pie's going to tell you no. Every single time.
I mean, technically, if you're the leader of a country, declaring war could be considered a free action.
Yeehaul's never going to be a
Baseline to
leader
war
of a
pop-up.
country. We all
Give
know
me a bit to
this.
type out the next one.
Gotcha. Yeah. While they're typing up the next one, were you wanting the werewolf stuff on World Nav, or you want to keep it secret for now?
I think for the time being, it should be kept off. Also, I think I still have some edits to do. I've addressed most of the stuff you linked, but
Yeah, I mean, that could be something that they could unlock that doesn't know exists, so it could be a nice surprise for players.
It's true.
Yeah,
true.
I guess the stuff that can go in World Anvil when I write it up is the player-facing side knowledge.
Gotcha.
Because I just wanted to hammer out the other stuff that was actually concrete in the world before I did a version that everyone would know. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because the moment a lot of experienced players hear about templates is like, ooh, I'm going to do everything I can to get that.
Well, the thing with werewolves at the very least is that the template for getting afflicted isn't purely beneficial.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about like veteran players that, that like to, they're all about the stats.
It's true. And natural born werewolves, I can see people wanting to become them. Still has some detriments involved. Afflicted ones, though, it's not so much a benefit.
You're going to have a bad time on the first full moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even with vampires, even though on paper there's a lot of benefits, there's also a lot of drawbacks, and it limits your ability to play because if you're traveling in daylight, well, I mean, most adventures go in daylight.
Man, I love the first time when you become a vampire in Oblivion and you try to fast travel during the day and you just end up dead.
I remember that so many times, just poofed into dust. It's horrible.
See the fun part about sunlight sensitivity is if you have someone in your party that doesn't have dark vision and they pull out a torch, it's like opening Chrome. You're gonna get flashbanged. Congratulations. You're gonna have a fun time.
Second, character backstory review. We briefly touched on this last meeting, but this is most likely going to be a full department, with the prerequisite of being a lore keeper. However, speaking of lore keepers, do you have any training processes for them, or way to get them fully integrated with the world? Any kind of big background documents for them to reference, if we want to recruit more?
So we do have some documents that I've gone through some of the other lore keepers and team that do list a lot of my general lore. There's also a lot of lore on the World Anvil that people can access. Overall, though, I think for people who want to become lore keepers would be read up on all the lore, whether that be on the World Anvil or on our hidden lore sheets within the lore subfolder of the Google Drive, and then get with me and we can discuss.
I remember you mentioned before that Syrik in general is just very open and accessible,
It's true.
so I assume it's mostly just a baseline of hard no/general guidelines.
Pretty much.
We do have someone who applied that wants to be a lore keeper, so that'll be
Very nice, very nice.
helpful.
It's true.
In the day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably, when we get the character sheets, I'm probably just going to spend a couple hours just scrolling through the backstories. So, I myself will be doing this particular job as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, it's hard to become an adventurer if there's no strife in one's backstory. I kind of expect there to be some form of dark rules being broken.
To be fair, as much as we harp on like they don't have parents, no sane person is going out to be an adventurer.
Thankfully we're distributed enough that you can focus on the stuff that needs your attention, once we enter live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People can just read through the lore and then get with me, and we can get them all signed up for lore keepers. Or if you played in one of my games for long enough, you probably
looks
have
like you have another recruit for lore keeper nerp lol.
Yeah,
Panda.
We do.
It's true.
Which means Panda gets the aspirant tag.
Mm-hmm.
Back to boot camp, Panda.
Hey, third topic. BRB.
All right. Man, being so many
I don't
pings
know
right
why
now.
you're excited about that.
See, if you ever have a family in your backstory and they're like, super happy-go-lucky, that's just ammunition for the DM.
Mm-hmm. I did that once. I was doing like a one shot with a bunch of buddies, and I was like, my character had a perfectly normal, happy childhood, nothing tragic. Then why are you adventuring? Because he was bored.
Have you seen the Money Adventurers, mate?
Yeah, like
Right.
because he was bored.
Yeah. Obviously, if someone tries to break the common sense things you don't do, that's clearly
Yeah.
Yeah, like
smack it. Clearly a block.
well, it's not ready yet. It'll probably because I need Charles here, but I'm working on something to guidelines.
I know.
I'm working on some guidelines
Oh my goodness, I can't type.
for I'm working on some guidelines. Legacy and Charles are helping me with it because I'm not the best when typing things due to dyslexia.
And obviously, if you read the character thing, they have to be of age to become an adventurer. Or they're obviously of their race, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once I have my write up, once the write up I'm working on, Charles is helping me with. We'll present it to you guys, and you guys can look at it just to see if you agree or disagree, stuff like that.
Very nice, very nice.
Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. But that's all right.
All right. Always next time.
Outside of that, we have Crew Check, Phoenix, and now Dr. Monty as DMs in training.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just gave them more time because they're the only 3 that have applied in a couple months, so it gives them time to read the rules and everything. So,
if I had the time, I would apply to be a DM, but I just don't.
That's fair.
Once we get into the world being open, that's when I'll start applying the actual time.
Yeah.
But as of right now, it's just 3 of them, and we haven't even started yet. So,
I mean, even when they get through until we launch, unless they take on other duties, they're probably just going to be sitting around and maybe cooking up ideas for adventures to run. But it's fine.
plus they can be like Princess forget what their name was. That runs the game every Monday.
Jenkins?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chen. Yeah, they if I remember right, they run a game every Monday at
Yeah,
Syrik.
I catch it every now and then. Good stuff.
Which again, for the DMs that are listening, you want to run games in Syrik to get better, go ahead.
It's true. Feel free to run games. There is Looking for a Group channel, and if you want to get practice using our systems, it's a way to do it. A lot of people looking for games.
Oh yeah.
Character sheet management and auditing. So for launch, given we don't have a fully distinct tech system yet, which I'll need to do a meeting with you at some time to determine scope, we'll probably be starting with individual character sheets assigned to players. We can put them all under the Syrik email, and when someone gets accepted they get assigned a specific sheet. In terms of data backup for auditing, does anyone have any comments on what kind of stuff on a character sheet we should also keep staff-side backups on? My current thoughts are just magical items and levels/XP. Rest can probably be pretty easily checked with change logs.
Well, obviously, gold. Well, gold will have to be a big one because if they're going to start crafting and trading and
Wouldn't that fall under economy to keep track of, or no? Or is that not economy's job to keep track of players' gold? Shit. No.
yeah, like in kind of like what Zach said, that's going to be on the player because that's race class stuff at DM. It's not a DM's job to make
No.
sure you know what your stuff does.
Oh, yeah,
That's that is only being fair.
No, I'm saying like for economy purposes, wouldn't they be keeping track of like how much gold does all the players have? That way they can't just say I suddenly have like 1 billion gold.
Yeah, like
I mean, a lot of what the DMs will be running, especially if a group does stick with the DM for longer than just a session, they will have, or a mission, they will have a pretty decent understanding of the equipment and like functionality of a character.
Actually, a simple way to solve that problem would be anything a DM rewards a player, he just records it on a Google Doc and then just submits it. That way we have it, and that way we could say, if they try to say they have something we don't have. That way, just like a small sheet that's saying, "Hey, I reward this player."
True.
This.
We can have a DM ledger too.
Yeah.
As
that
for
that will help with backlog.
As for Sanity and Madness, that'll be tracked separately because I'm pretty sure, unless we're going to widespread it across everywhere, that should only apply to Doliter.
It can occur elsewhere due to the fact that, for one, we have sigil magic, which does cause a roll for insanity table.
Which is great, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's great seeing the healer go catatonic mid battle.
It's amazing. So that is going to be a requirement outside of Doliter as well, and there's certain functions that will trigger madness outside of Doliter. However, Doliter, I think it's required for anyone who is playing in Doliter to have it on their sheet. Not just
yes.
We should keep an eye on it. It is outright just required.
Yeah, but that does, in a sense, help us in having to track it because that means only people in these certain circumstances will have it, which
Indeed.
helps us not have to majorly track it unless they actively punch the beehive.
Yeah. I also think Frozen Goggle's suggestion of rep influence is a good one to have on there too. We want to keep an eye on their reputation / influence as well as their prestige. It's going to be pretty important.
We tracked prestige on the Varium sheet, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think in terms of data gathering, though, having access to, as you're saying, class, race, DD, all these different choices would be helpful, as it will help us determine what races, classes, etc. would need to be looked at in terms of why isn't this race being chosen, for example, or why isn't this class being chosen, why is this subclass not being chosen, so we can see if things need buffs or anything like that.
Or rebalance.
Or rebalance, yes.
Yeah, It's less for auditing and more just for data. Would be funny if someone tried to change race secretly though.
Yeah, I doubt that would happen, but it would be funny. It could happen in session, though. I can see someone getting a trap that
I
goes,
was always an elf, I swear.
I swear,
Wow.
I'm suddenly an owlbear. What?
yeah. Reincarnation definitely will be a thing. I don't think it's going to be an issue for the first little bit, though.
Yeah, because that's a higher level spell,
Yeah.
isn't it? Is it like
It's, I think, like 6, 7.
6? Yeah, I thought
Maybe
it was like
5th.
6 levels.
Pretty sure it's 6 or 7, though. Yeah, unless a DM throws an NPC around, which could happen. But, yeah. Okay, it's 5th level. Pretty high up there.
Jokey. Add reincarnation to the madness.
I mean, just every incarnation with a a wild magic table. There you go.
Aged would be a good one to track, as Pi suggests, yeah.
We did bring up the fact that wild magic cannot drop you below the adult age.
Yes.
Yes.
Or lowest adult age of the race.
Yes.
Back when we were talking about it.
Yeah. And no, you cannot be a lolly 900-year-old vampire.
Nope.
No.
That's correct. It's true.
No children.
No childlike features or appearance or behavior in your character. I don't care if your backstory tries to say, "Oh, I have trauma that makes me childlike." No.
So a gnome that got bit by a werewolf would be hilarious. It just looks like a fucking poodle.
Yeah. Now, it is kind of an issue with halflings. They're obviously not child, but they do look like childs in many cases.
You can make them look more mature as adults. Like they still can have adult maturity to their face, muscle structure, and features. Like
it's true.
They can have a full beard. They can have gray hair, whatever.
Yeah.
They can have more defined like jaw lines, like a more mature person.
Yeah.
Thicker necks.
It's not hard.
Like that.
It's just something to keep an eye on.
More or less, they cannot say they look like a child, even in the events of a halfling. If they do, that's a permanent no-no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is something I'm going to do. I'm going to be going through all the races and just checking in on their adult minimum age and just upping it to a bit more reasonable level to fit with proper standards in this regard. So like humans, I believe they're currently set to 14 or probably 15. I believe that's when Pathfinder has them set. I'll probably just bump that up to 18.
That would be safe.
Yeah. So I think technically, as it stands, humans can be playable characters at 16 right now, because the lowest intuitive age category is a D6 on humans, I'm pretty sure. So technically, as it stands, they can be 16, but
Okay, last one is just the continuation of our downtime stuff. This is the only vote of this current set of topics.
All right. Going over players and DMs interacting with downtime days during missions, as well as when should downtime days be stockpiled.
Okay, with that posted, let's talk about topics to prepare for next week.
I'm just reading through this. I'll give my opinions at the end of the vote. Okay. I definitely think something that we should be discussing next week would be what's the best way to word this? How long of a, well, maybe not next week, but it is something we should discuss. How long of a start do we want to have just the RP phase open before we start opening up missions? I know that's something we were going to be doing, is that launching with a phase where there's no missions being enabled. It's just people being able to get used to the characters, get talked to around players, and then we open missions. So the question there would be, how long do we want?
I guess it really depends on quantity of players.
Well, I think 2 weeks to a month wouldn't be
Yeah,
bad.
Say at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah.
It gives enough times for DMs to the most of staff to get a general idea of where people are congregating, more or less, seeing what their interests are, and then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I say about 2 weeks is good.
And,
That
and
way.
then obviously in certain regions they have to do certain stuff, so that also helps them get more used to that.
All right. Yeah, I think 2 week or so is a decent amount of time. In terms of launch, another thing to discuss would be, when are we wanting to start like heavily meeting with the DM team and getting our missions into gear? So I think with how close we are to launch, if people are ready to start, wiping off the dust and getting into gear, this week or maybe next week is when we should start having adventure team meetings again. Just to get ready for the phase launch.
I'll start poking the more inactive DMS yet, and then we can prep for a meeting next week maybe.
How many people do we have in terms of numbers for like signed on DMs?
We have online currently 19 of signed on DMs. I know the actual number is around 36, 38, and we have a few in training right now.
Mm-hmm.
But last I looked in our roll count is 36, 38, somewhere around there.
And
Next
well,
up,
you said like
token
19.
creation and standards. We talked about this briefly back when we first discussed the topic, but you're providing some stuff for standard macros and spell macros.
Yes.
You mentioned wanting some requirements for attack and spell macros, but not full restrictions. Is that what you want still?
Yes. I think the core thing is players are free to, make their own macros and all that good stuff, but obviously they need to be tied to our properties that we use. And then in terms of attacks, I would like it, if there is an attack roll macro, that the dice roll mechanic of it, of how like the dice is rolled, is something that is visible. So not being hidden by like an R, for example, in the coding. That's like
More or
only...
less.
Go ahead.
Yeah. More or less, you change the R's to a T.
Pretty much. That's the only real requirement I have, and
most of them you do, some you don't, because it will be like, that doesn't work. And like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, as long as the die roll itself is visible, I'm not too worried about it.
You also mentioned providing basic racial tokens / macros.
Yes.
How's the progress on that?
So the
also,
current
okay,
framework.
So we should get some map tools macro standards up in a FAQ or something.
Yeah. But the current framework that I have does have a listing for every spell, its just core, as well as almost all my homebrew spells. It also has macros for every sigil. It also has macros for a lot of features, class features, I believe. I'd have to look at it again, because that might be something I need to grab the thing they sent me and put it in the framework. But yeah, people have been sending me a lot of stuff. It's been very helpful. Rhyme stuff's been helpful. You know, it's been good stuff. Saphira's been helpful too. A lot of good stuff. Just some other people. Can't remember names right now because I'm bad with names, but there we go. The framework also has systems made for making changes to one's features pretty seamlessly. Like it has its own like little window pop up that helps you go through the character creation, so we won't have to worry about how do I make characters. So I will be working on a video on how to make characters, just so it is still there and available. In terms of the other features, there are going to have like pre-made macros for them. I'll be putting a lot of my macros that I've been making for my own characters onto a token as well. So we'll have, like full-on wizard class features available, blood hunter features available, a bunch of other things available. So won't take too long to get them on there. But yes, we all have a library. They're available of pre-made class feature, spell feature, racial feature, all that good stuff available for players to use and just copy pasta. Oh, another thing that's on the framework. Someone made, I don't remember who, made monster tokens for every single summon. So that is available now as well in the framework. So if players are like, I want to summon a creature, I don't have it prepped, it's good. We have them prepped.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that you don't. Yeah, because that'd be like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that was a something that slowed down play a little bit back in the day, but
yeah.
They're all set now.
People not having like, I don't have tokens for that. It's like,
mm-hmm. And they work well for wild shape as well, so
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Oh, speaking of tokens, though, if you've been working on monsters for your own games or whatnot using the system, send them my way so I can add them to the bestiary. It's going to be getting that thing all filled up with a bunch of monsters we can use.
Okay, that's one topic for next week. Next one is pretty important on the LW side of things, but do we have birth traits / origins prepped? Regional, more generic, backgrounds, something else?
So, in terms of birth traits, professions, origins, all of those are nearly prepped. And I say nearly because I intend to add some generic ones that players can access. That'll be something I'll be working on either tomorrow or Tuesday. But those won't be too difficult for me to make because I already have a bunch made in a different folder. I just need to put them on World Anvil. So yes, soon we will have all those made, and then players can just select
General, how would you describe them? Professions, regional traits, or backgrounds?
I would describe these traits themselves as origin. Like combined one's birth trait, profession trait, regional traits, etc. They're all just part of your origin.
So all of those are available, but will players only pick one? Or will they pick like 3 separate?
So players will choose a birth trait, a profession trait, and an origin, which is tied to their region. But, yeah, they choose 3 total, essentially. 1 from each of those categories. Yeah, one of the things I've been looking into is updating the spell for summoning spells, but that's something we'll be going over with Balance Team, because obviously 5e is...
You type those 3 categories out?
Yeah. But obviously 5e is an issue when it comes to large numbers of creatures. Because unlike in Pathfinder, where having a large number of creatures was only really helpful for cannon fodder, 5e, they're actually useful.
Mm-hmm.
But all that, like birth trait, profession trait, and all that good stuff, that's already on character creation. So I think putting the character creation document itself towards the community and seeing if there's anything, like any errors they can find in it, or if they're confused about anything, would be a good idea to go through. Just to see if there's anything we need to fix on that document itself. But overall, I think it covers the core of what players will need. I think the document itself actually goes through birth, profession, and origin in decent detail, I'd say. Yeah, this is the section for origin, so I think it's a decent set. Anyways, that's all set
Last
up.
thing I'll bring up this week for discussion next week.
Yeah.
We'll be reviewing the various staff roles and cleaning them up and clarifying stuff like training, staff benefits, expectations, so on.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something we should look into. We have a lot of unnecessary roles at this point in time.
Can't believe we have to remove Pi. Too much power.
Rip. Well, I mean, they do have a lot of roles. We can give them more, though.
That'll be a pretty big one, so I'll end off on that one. As usual, if you need to bring anything up, feel free to use the form in Firehouse or just ping.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. If there's anything you guys want to bring up for the meeting now, I have nothing else to discuss, and seems like he has nothing else to bring up, so now is the time to do it. If you want to mention anything or talk about something.
My stuff is just waiting for Charles is available.
Mm-hmm.
On that with me.
No problem, no problem.
Train stuff's talked about. They've been going pretty good. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Me and Charles are going to be working on, training, a training guideline thing for moderators for newer ones.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we're working on.
The only thing would be for general training that goes for legacy, and then lore stuff would be on you there.
Mm-hmm.
DM stuff is mostly self-absorbed by everybody.
Very
Most
good, very
times. Anyway.
As always, if anyone has any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to any of us in leadership.
Yeah.
Because we will do everything we can to help you.
Mm-hmm. And don't worry about pinging me. I read all my pings, so if you want to message me, feel free to do so. But seems like there's no other things to bring up, so appreciate everyone's faces, appreciate all the work you've been helping out with and all that good stuff, and if you are wanting to test out your DMing skills or just run some games, feel free to do so. I encourage it. We need more games being run and all that good stuff, so that will be the meeting, and